On September 18, 2016, a militant attack struck an Indian Army Brigade headquarters in the Uri sector of Jammu and Kashmir. The loss of 18 soldiers triggered an immediate, large-scale military mobilization across the entire region. Following retaliatory strikes, cross-border shelling escalated. The government restricted civilian movement, and by nightfall, the military curfews had cleared the highways of all traffic. This total lockdown created a physical vacuum. Without the constant hum of traffic or the presence of routine patrols, the mountain highways became silent and dark, existing in a state of extreme, unnatural isolation. In the middle of this lockdown, 4 friends, Manish, Neeraj, Vinay, and Aman, began an 80-kilometer drive from Udhampur. They were headed to a wedding, a trip that required navigating some of the most treacherous mountain passes in the region at night. Their destination, Pogoltaristan, is known locally as the Land of Fairies. The name reflects an ancient folklore rooted in the area, where generations of residents have shared accounts of supernatural entities living among the peaks. They set off in a white SUV, reaching the town of Ramban around 11 p.m. As they crossed the bridge over the Chenab River, the last signs of civilization vanished, leaving them as the only vehicle on a pitch-black mountain pass. Leaving Ramban meant entering a permanent geographic blind spot. With truck drivers parked for the night and the army focused on the border, the 4 friends were now in a stretch of wilderness where help was no longer a possibility. The topography of this route is unforgiving. The road is a narrow ledge pinned between a vertical mountain face and a 3,000-foot drop into a jagged ravine. Near midnight, the temperature inside the car plummeted. Suddenly, a massive, heavy thud hit the roof. The SUV's suspension compressed under the weight of something invisible that had just landed directly above them. There was no scratching, no growling, and no sound of movement. Only the dead, crushing weight remained on the roof, turning the vehicle into a psychological trap as they drove. They were approaching a bridge over the Kuni Nala, or the Bloody Drain. A putrid stench, the unmistakable smell of cremated remains, began bleeding through the SUV's air vents. At the bridge, they saw a woman covered in blood waving for help near a crashed car. But as Manish and Neeraj prepared to assist, her face contorted. Her eyes vanished, replaced by 2 hollow, pitch-black voids. A man who had been lying motionless on the ground suddenly stood up and moved toward them. The friends scrambled back into the car and fled, as Aman fainted in the back seat from the sheer intensity of the encounter. Further down the road, they encountered a man in a white tunic and red turban sitting on a horse in the middle of the lane. Each time Neeraj drove toward him, the horse and rider glided silently to the side of the road without making a sound. This happened 6 times in a row. The encounters were no longer isolated incidents. From the weight on the roof to the repeating horsemen, the group was being pursued by a series of manifestations that forced the driver's focus away from the road and into the dark. Aman eventually woke up, but he was no longer himself. He stared at the empty darkness outside, his voice merging with the raspy tone of an old man as he whispered, "Look, our friends are walking." In this isolated stretch of rock and shadow, the car's rear tire suddenly blew out. They were forced to stop their momentum entirely to change the flat. While Neeraj and Manish worked, the heavy punctured tire they had just removed began to move. It lifted itself from a flat position on the ground, stood perfectly upright, and rolled silently over the edge of the 3,000-foot cliff. From inside the SUV, Aman, still speaking with the dual voice, remarked, "He took your tire." Neeraj and Manish didn't wait to see where the tire landed. Seeing a heavy, deflated object move with its own momentum was enough. They abandoned their tools, threw the car into gear, and fled toward the village lights. The moment the car crossed into the perimeter of Pogoltaristan, the heavy atmosphere and the foul smell vanished instantly. Aman snapped out of his trance, looking around in confusion. He had no memory of the possession or the entities they had encountered on the drive. The sudden end to the terror suggests the threat was tied to a specific territory. Once the vehicle left the highway's reach, the manifestations could no longer sustain themselves. Village elders later explained the history of Kuni Nala. During the construction of the Banihal Tunnel, A massive collapse crushed dozens of workers, leaving their remains trapped beneath the earth. Local belief holds that these unquiet spirits, including a pregnant woman, haunt the road, manifesting to distract drivers and cause the fatal accidents that frequently occur at the bridge. The elders identified the raspy voice as the Pretraj, or Spirit King. They believed the entity intended to take Aman, but a small Bajrambali idol on the dashboard acted as a protective ward. Prevented from taking the passenger, the entity took the tire instead. In places like Kuninala, the asphalt serves as a lid on a mass grave. When the noise of the living fades away, the tragedy buried beneath the road makes its presence known.